What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Ethan Riley. I am a senior Division I pole vaulter for Florida International University studying sport and exercise science. Last video, I gave you guys an analysis of the deadlift, and this week I'm going to be giving you an analysis of the split jerk, both concentric only and full stretch shortening cycle. And we're going to be talking about why the split jerk is important and how we can use it to improve our sport performance as well as build resilience to injury, more specifically in the general preparation phase. So when it comes to improving athletic performance, there are about 8 things that the split jerk does really well. However, in today's video, I want to take a little bit deeper of a look into 4 of those categories. The first of which being vertical force development, or VFD. So the split jerk does a really good job of putting emphasis on triple extension. This is when the knees and the hips simultaneously extend, meaning they start and they finish extending at the same time, and then that is followed by the ankles going into plantar flexion. And vertical force development is very, very important for acceleration, which, as you know, in sports is a huge factor of improving your athletic performance. So the second huge benefit of the split jerk is going to be the development of our ballistic hip flexion and extension speed. Now this comes into play especially in sprinting, as the quicker we can flex and extend our hips, the quicker we can cycle through the running gait, and the quicker we can run. As the athlete in the split jerk goes into triple extension, they are then going to split their legs, split jerk. So the front hip is going to flex as fast as it can, boom, and the back hip is going to extend as fast as it can, boom. And this is going to build range of motion as well as improve our ballistic speed. The third main benefit that I want to talk about is the proximal hamstring braking forces, or the absorption of force. With a more experienced lifter that I'm going to show you in some videos later, you will actually hear a stomp as they catch the weight. Now this correlates a lot with sprinting. As your foot touches the ground, you are actually decelerating, which puts a lot of tension on the quads eccentrically as well as the proximal hamstrings. And the more comfortable that we can get and the quicker that we can absorb that force, the stronger those proximal hamstrings are going to become, which is going to put us at a lot less risk whenever we are sprinting as well as performing the split jerk. And the last main benefit of the split jerk that I want to talk about is the deceleration followed by the acceleration. But more specifically, in between those two is a little phase called the amortization phase. And this is where our body will store elastic energy within our tendons and then as quickly as possible release that energy. And a good way that we can visualize this is to imagine that our tendons are rubber bands. As you decelerate, you are pulling the rubber band apart, which will add elastic energy to our tendons. And then, as you go into acceleration, you release one side of the rubber band, and all of that elastic energy is released. And the shorter we can get that amortization phase, the more efficient our athletes will be at transferring energy between deceleration and acceleration, which will in turn make them faster. And now I'm going to show you guys some videos of both concentric only and full stretch shortening cycle split jerk. I'm going to talk about how to set up for the lift, how to perform the lift, as well as the application of the principles that we just talked about. So the reason we would start with a concentric only split jerk in the general preparation phase is to give the tendons of our athletes time to adapt throughout the training phase. With the full stretch shortening cycle split jerk, or SSE, the tendons of our athletes can become very fatigued very quickly under heavy loads. So, when we remove the amortization phase, we lower the risk of injury for our athletes due to fatigue. What we would do instead is we would build our athletes' tendon strength by adding in exercises like depth drops and then progressing into depth jumps from higher heights. That way we still get the adaptations we are looking for in relation to shortening the amortization phase, all while we are placing less fatigue on the tendons. And now for the setup. We'll have our athletes' feet at hip width. We'll have them get into a quarter squat position. Remember to have them brace by pulling their rib cage down, their belly button to their spine, and to pinch a penny between their glutes. We want to make sure that our athlete's spine is upright and the angle of their elbow flexion is around 45 degrees. And then with triple extension of the lower body, we want to make sure that our athletes are extending both their hips and knees, starting at the same time and finishing at the same time. and then finishing that triple extension off with plantar flexion of the ankles. With split jerk, we also now have full flexion of the shoulders as well as the extension of the elbow, and we want to make sure that the athletes are stacking their wrist, which means that the weight of the bar is going straight through the heel of the palm. And next we see the ballistic hip flexion and extension. So in this video, the athlete's left hip is going to flex as quickly as possible, and the athlete's right hip is going to extend as quickly as possible. With the catch here, what we'll see normally under heavier loads is that the athlete is actually going to drop under the bar versus pressing the bar above their head. And position-wise, we want to basically see a small lunge. We never want to see too much extension of the knee, as that will place a lot of tension on the distal hamstrings. What we want to see is that the knee is almost directly over the heel in the front leg, and this is going to keep those deceleration forces in the proximal hamstring, which is where we want it. With the back leg, as the athlete is stabilizing, we can cue them to try to drop their heel to the ground. This is going to give us some free range of motion of the ankle. And sometimes as you flex your shoulders, your rib cage can kind of flare out a little bit. If you tell your athletes to just remember to brace and to pull the rib cage down, this can help strengthen the bottom position and keep the athlete safe. And finally, to stand up, we want to make sure that our athletes are always starting with their front leg by extending their front knee and stepping into the middle position, and then following that by stepping with their trail leg also into the middle position. If an athlete were to try to bring their trail leg forward first, it's going to put a lot of tension on the front leg's glute, which is going to make it extremely hard to stabilize and increase the risk of injury, which is never what we want. And finally, with lowering the bar, we want to try to cue our athletes to return to that quarter squat position. As you can see here in the video, I don't do a very good job of pushing my hips back, and this just places excess tension on the patellar tendons that we would rather not see. And finally, we're going to take a look at some clips of the full stretch shortening cycle split jerk. So in this movement, you can see that the amortization phase is going to come into play. And so as you can see at the beginning of the lift, the athlete performs what we call a dip. Here we will see a rapid deceleration while the athlete eccentrically contracts the quads and the glutes, and then that little amortization phase in between where elastic tension is added to the tendons, and then that release of the tension during the concentric contraction of both the quads and the glutes. As you can see with the full stretch shortening cycle split jerk, we're going to be adding in that dip phase where we can build up tendon strength in our athletes as well as focus on some deceleration aspects of sport performance. And there you have it. Today we talked about the split jerk, both concentric only and the full stretch shortening cycle, why it's important, and how we use it for improving our sport performance. I hope you enjoyed the video, maybe learned something, and I hope to see you in the next one.